The Zamfara State Chapter of the People's Democratic Party has opposed Governor Bello Matawalle's directive to the people of the state to bear arms and defend themselves. Secretary of the PDP in the state, Farouk Ahmed, said in a statement that the decision to allow people to bear arms could lead to anarchy and political vendetta against the opposition parties. According to Ahmed, it is the sole responsibility of both the state and federal government to protect the lives and property of the citizenry. Rather than encourage residents to bear arms, he said the party had advised the state government to recruit community protection guards similar to JTF. And also the military high command rejected the call by the state governor and asked the Commissioner of Police to work out modalities for the gun license to residents willing to bear arms to protect themselves. Now, retiring the Chief of Defense Staff General, the Chief of Defense Staff General Lucky Rabo said he did not see the basis of such call. He spoke at the National Defense College Abuja during the opening ceremony of the joint exercise for the National Defense College and War Colleges of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, codenamed Exercise Grand National. He said it was expedient for stakeholders to follow the rules and constitution accordingly. So let me start with you. What do you think about that?
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Because the security situation is, I mean, it is not abating, that's for sure. So it is understandable for agitations to follow, and with the governors overwhelmed. So it won't be out of place for us to hear this kind of thing where the governor will have tell his citizens to get licensed to bear arms.
Yes, thank you so much. First and foremost, I don't think it's out of place for the governor of Zamfara State to call for the citizens to carry arms, given the level of insecurity in the country. Of course, desperate times requires desperate measures, but we also have to balance it with the possibility of abusing that opportunity. I know even currently there are procedures through which someone can obtain licenses to carry arms or guns. But for the citizens, you know, with little or no training to be allowed to carry arms, it would degenerate into something worse. So much as I understand the concern of the governor, and indeed Nigerians, you know, in order to tame the security incidences in the country, but we must have to be careful, because these arms, when given to wrong hands, there is likelihood of abuse. You know, if you give arms to people who are not well trained on how to use those arms, everybody will be in danger. Yes, I understand, like I said earlier, the intention of the governor was to ensure that the security system in Zamfara specifically, and Nigeria in general, is addressed. But we cannot, you know, because we want to solve a problem, we create more problems to ourselves. So I do not think that that call is necessary at this time. I do not think it's important that citizens should be allowed to bear arms.
Barrister Elvis Asia, it is good to see you. So what's your take on that? Do you think it is necessary?
Well, I think the issue is not necessarily whether that is necessary or not. I think the issue is just to look at the circumstances for this call. You know, for the government to have done this, it's obvious that it's giving up on the current security architecture in the country, which is centralization of policing and all of that. Which, you know, many people have always called for state policing, you know, so that the governor, for example, yeah, you call him the chief security officer, but doesn't have the capacity to deliver on that promise. And so I think that's really where the issue is. And on whether or not it is necessary, I think we also, again, look at the intent. And I don't think the intent is for people to just start carrying arms and all that. I think it's telling people to defend themselves.
Exactly.
And I think that's the natural law. You know, the fact that people should defend themselves is not really, you don't need law for that. If you know for a fact that people are coming to kill you, burn your houses, you know, kill your children and all of that, you know, by natural law expects that you should defend yourself. Even the Constitution gives you the right to defend yourself. But on the issue of bearing arms, of course, you know, there has to be proper licensing, just like my friend have said, to ensure that, we know what was happening even in countries like the US where people are reasonably trained, people, because of the ease with which you can get guns. You have heard of cases where people will invade malls and start killing people. So, there has to be proper licensing. But, the central issue raised by the core is really that, look, the current security system that we have cannot work. We need a system that not just gives the governor the figurehead role of being a chief security officer. We need a system that empowers the governor to do something in terms of addressing security. And I think Zamfara may have to take a cue from some other states and other regions of the country, what they're doing now. People are coming up with all sorts of security systems to ensure that there's security. We have Amotekun in the southwest, in different places. Even in my state, in Edo State, they have something like that. So the governor will have to find a way to invest in that and secure his people. But it's just expresses the sad realities of the country at the moment.
Okay, let's go back to the US where Barrister Ayobaya Babade is joining us live via Zoom. Of course, is in Missouri precisely. What side of the divide are you? I mean, since this call by the governor, Matawalle, came out, it has sparked national discourse and debate with people on the side of to bear arms and the other saying no to cause chaos and anarchy. Which side of the divide are you?
I very much to the line of my colleagues in the studio that it will be because globally right now the world is going towards less and less of arms. In the African Union, for example, they had the team silencing the gun for the whole of for a while, saying that we should reduce the proliferation of arms in the system. And so it's very I understand the pain of the governor, because a governor, the chief security officer of the state, would be in so much pain that he can't do what he can to protect his people. And so telling the police or to begin to make modalities for the people to rightly hold arms is in his own best interest to see how he can provide adequate security for the residents of the states. And fully well, like I have said earlier, that there is no effective state policing policy, that the only way it will be for the citizens of the residents of that state to hold arms. However, like I rightly said, there'll be more armed than good, because even in the United States, where there is that prevalence of arms, we still see in this year alone, we've seen over 200 mass shootings occurring. In Nigeria, where the policing is not as quick and the emergency response is not that fast, we would experience much more if guns are put in the hands of just anybody. So yes, I understand the part of the pain of the governor saying let something be done, but but having the citizens to be armed is something that will be very difficult. Even last year, the Ondo State House of Assembly, a member of the Ondo State, a member of the lower chamber from Ondo State, tried to pass an amendment to the Firearms Act to enable every adult who has an NIN to be able to hold firearms within the country. But that bill has not gone so far, because there is still that also it's not ripe for us for anyone to be allowed yet to hold. I don't think the time will be, because globally there's that move to reduce the number of arms so that gun-related deaths would be reduced. Thank you very much.
Okay, now we understand the call by the states, different governors, where the alarm of the insecurity overwhelming them, and in order to avoid that, in the southwest was when Amotekun was created. Because of the fact that there have been several talks that Nigeria is under policed. The population we have in this country has to compared to the number of security agencies we have. It's not proportional. Yeah. So, but that has not exactly quelled the insecurity issue, because now there is the big question mark in the Amotekun, because there is no solid constitutional backing, so, and that is why it was easy for government to invade a church and
And the
cause
governor
that
couldn't do
amount
anything.
of massacre. But now, if you had like one or two persons in the church with the license to bear arms and they have their guns, perhaps maybe the massacre would have, it wouldn't have been a massacre as it were.
Yes, I think I agree with your guest, virtual guest. I think he made the point very clearly that even in the United States, where relatively citizens are allowed to carry arms, you know, you see the abuse inherent there. Then when you relate it to Nigeria, where there is a huge gap between the leaders and the led, there is so much social stratification. You know, anybody could wake up and get angry and shoot anybody, you know. So we have not gotten to that extent. But for the purposes of insecurity in Nigeria, the constitution has not even given the state governors, my friend here rightly pointed out that governors are the chief securities of their respective states, but that is in paper. Governors cannot even control the commissioner of police in their own states. So I think the first approach should be for us to begin to have state policing, where the governor can issue instructions to the police within his own state.
But the call has been going on forever.
Of course.
It has not been answered. In the meantime, what can the governors do? What can the citizens do to protect themselves?
You know, technically, even though it has no constitutional background, like you say, Amotekun, and I'm aware that even in Lagos, you see some of these state security apparatus. Most of these things are
like
done in a way to supplement to supplement the current security measures in the country. So if every state in Nigeria will adopt that, I'm sure with time we'll get to that point. So the clamor will actually push the government to ensure that state governors you know, are given the wherewithal to run state police. I know that most of the challenges we currently have is that there is no trust. Even the federal government doesn't trust state governments, because when they want to get something out of a state, they use the instrumentality of the federal police, you know, to get at it. But if there is a state police where there may be a little resistance, you know, that may not be allowed to go well. That's my position.
I mean, the call for the state police, it's been forever, and meanwhile people are dying.
You see, unfortunately, this country is not properly structured. We all know this. A big country such as Nigeria cannot be centrally run, and we have seen the futility of trying to do that, particularly where you have a grossly incompetent leadership, like we have had in the last couple of years. So we cannot continue to run this system that is not, you know, a federal system. The Constitution says we are going to have a federal system, but you know, the practical realities of what we are doing it's more like a unity system. The president controls virtually everything. You know, so until we have a system where if you are a governor of your state, you can reasonably control security, then we're not going to get there. We need to go beyond just talking about it. Actions need to be taken. I want to believe that somebody like the governor, you know, the governors should team up together at the level of the governors forum. They have a lot of influence in the system. They can mobilize the.
But they've done that with, you know, Southwest governors.
I know. I'm talking about the centralization. You know.
Okay.
You know, giving it constitutional backing. The point has been made, for example, that even the Amotekun.
Isn't that where the call for restructuring is
exactly.
coming from?
So the governors should, you know, come together on this particular issue and say, look, we cannot. I mean, if I were a governor, I would be embarrassed that I'm supposed to be a governor of a state, but I cannot control security. So they should team up together and put pressure on the federal government and the National Assembly so that the constitution can be amended to, you know, allow a reasonable measure of control. Even if you want to sustain the current policing system, you know, our laws can be reviewed in such a way that the government is able to determine, to control the commissioner of police within the state and mobilize the police apparatus to challenges that we have within the state. Until we do that, until we, you know, because you see, Nigeria is like a beautiful edifice that has no foundation. If the foundation of the house is not properly done, you can't palliate it. One day, no matter how the gold you put in, it's going to collapse. Which one? Nigeria is collapsing on all of us right now because the fundamentals, the foundational issues are not being addressed, and this is one of them. We have to address it.
So how detailed is the Constitution in terms of persons that are authorized to bear arms? What category of persons are allowed?
There's no express constitutional provision on the right to bear arms. the control of arms and licensing is within the purview of the Firearms Act. That's another legislation, which but let me just quickly mention that.
Okay.
Under the Constitution,
like ordinary Nigerian, how does it work?
Let me just quickly mention that under the Constitution, the firearms control and all of that is within the purview of the federal government. Again, this is one of the centralization that we talk about. The federal government has the right to control the use of firearms, and in that regard, there's a law, the Firearms Act, which says that before you can bear arms, you have to apply for license. There are 3 categories of arms that you can bear. There's the automatic and the machine guns, which licenses can only be granted by the president. Then there's other pistols and other kinds of firearms, in which case you have to apply to the Special General Police. That used to be the case under the law. And then dead guns and gaming guns and all that could in the past could be gotten even from the state commissioner of police or whatever. But today that has even been stopped. In fact, there was a time they even said those who got licenses should return their arms. In fact, a few years ago, that was what happened in this country, where they said, look, if you've gotten a firearm license and you have a firearm, you have to return that. In fact, they have revoked the licenses that were granted. But the law actually ordinarily allows Nigerians to apply for these licenses. But the reality is that you can't even get it. Even before, when it was operational, you needed to, there was a lot of corruption in the system. For you to get to the police, in order to get the firearm license for you to provide security for yourself in your home, it was very difficult because you needed to, go through a lot. And so right now, as we speak, there isn't even any proper mechanism for acquiring licenses for firearms. But like the governor has clearly expressed, but the people are exposed to other people who are not following these rules, who are not bound by the Firearms Act, who even appears to have some support in government, because when they operate with reckless abandon, no control, whatever it is, we have seen groups, even herdsmen, in some cases, with AK-47. We have seen it in this country. Were they giving licenses? So, right now, there's complete breakdown of law and order in the country. And when there's a breakdown like that, it will amount to oppression. If you say some people are carrying firearms, they are killing people, they are shooting, and then the rest of Nigerians, we are saying you cannot get license. To do firearms.
And just be waiting for the state governors to protect them, and the governors don't have the power to protect them.
People need to hear from the governor or anybody to self-defense is a natural law. Nobody can take that away from you. I can bet you if you come to my house and I'm not taking on aware, I'm going to deploy anything I have to defend my. That's law. Is a natural law. So on that I don't have any issue. The only problem is that if we really want to live in a sane society, there should be balance. We need to see government directly fighting these people, controlling these people, making sure that no group has the advantage. Because under the Constitution, you're not supposed to discriminate against anybody. We have seen people, with guns, with AK-47. We have seen it. People are carrying all sorts of firearms all over the country, and nobody is stopping them. And you are not telling the rest of us who are law-abiding to keep waiting for license. So I won't call for chaos, but that's the reality of the situation.
Okay, and let's go back to Barrister Babade, where this discourse should it be taken to the National Assembly, where it will be properly put into place, where we know the kind of persons to bear arms and how there should be a proper guideline. I'm not sure this is going to spark the national debate like the one we have in the US, where we have the Republicans and the Democrats vastly opposed to each other, because I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will want to defend themselves, but with proper guidance and led by the National Assembly.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so one thing I just point on the earlier point is that security is, for any state or any government, is very expensive. What Lagos is doing, there are very few states who can afford to do that. And the second thing is that the truth of the matter is that no matter the number of security apparatus that you have, the best form of security is the self-policing, or the situation where you say something, you say something. But the issue we have in Nigeria is that it's difficult for it. Like I said earlier, there is no trust. So somebody sees something, there is no place he can say what he has seen without the fear of him being even arrested or being accused. And so that's where a lot about the issue like, because in countries where these things work, you see that someone sees something or he sees an suspicious movement, he has a phone call, he has somebody he can call and say, I have seen this, investigate. But we don't have that system in Nigeria such that until after things has occurred, then we now start acting when things have already occurred. That is the main issue. And and yes, we can have a legislation that would, you can have amendment to the Firearms Act that would state who can hold arms and all the likes. That is something that we can